Hello there, and welcome to Science for Sleep, where curiosity drifts like a cloud and science takes the long, quiet road toward slumber. Tonight, our soft little voyage takes us far, farther than we have ever gone, in fact, beyond galaxies, beyond the edges of space as we know it, and possibly into others, worlds within worlds, reflections with lives of their own, universes layered like pages in a book we can't quite finish reading, because tonight we're gently opening the door just a crack to the multiverse, that strange and shimmering idea that maybe, just maybe, we are not the only universe, and you are not the only you. Maybe there's a version of you listening to this from a garden, or a spaceship, or a world where tea never gets cold. But before we float too far into the cosmic unknown, let me ask you something simple. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? And what time is it, exactly, in your quiet little corner of the stars? If this journey brings you even a moment of calm, a pause from your day, or a gentle tug towards sleep, I'd be ever so grateful if you gave this sleepy space a like, maybe even subscribed. It helps this calm corner drift toward others who might need it too. And now, settle in. Slow your thoughts. Let the cosmos expand gently behind your eyes. Because somewhere between this breath and the next lies the question, what if our universe is just one of many? Have you ever had a moment that felt like it didn't quite belong? A fleeting sense that something was off by just a breath? Like walking into a room and forgetting why, or dreaming of a place you've never been, but somehow know by heart. Maybe it was déjà vu, or maybe it was something else. We don't usually think of ourselves as split across realities. We picture life as a single thread, weaving through time in one neat direction, from cradle to memory to the unknown. But haven't we all wondered, even just for a second, what if things had gone another way? What if you'd taken the other job, said yes instead of no, missed that train, or caught it? In those small, quiet moments of reflection, it almost feels like we're brushing up against another version of our life. Not a fantasy exactly, but a parallel possibility, something just out of reach. And while physics may offer equations and diagrams to explain the multiverse, the very idea begins and lingers in the mind, in the stories we tell ourselves when we can't sleep, in the dreams that feel too vivid, too strange, too stitched with meaning to be random, in the mirror when you catch your own eyes and wonder if somewhere in some version of reality they blinked just a fraction of a second too early. Because long before we tried to prove the multiverse, we felt it. It's in our language. We talk about paths not taken, sliding doors, roads diverging in a yellow wood. We imagine crossroads in life not as forks but as fractures, the beginning of another story that we'll never get to read, and perhaps that feeling is just a trick of memory, a byproduct of imagination. Or maybe it's more than that. Children often sense it first without the need for logic. They'll say things like, "I've been here before," or "I think I dreamed this already," or even, "I remember being someone else," and we smile and nod and chalk it up to creativity. But inside, a part of us stirs, because maybe we remember feeling that way too. Maybe we still do. There's a term some researchers use, counterfactual thinking. It describes the mind's natural ability to imagine alternatives to what actually happened. It's not abnormal, it's not delusion, it's how we learn, how we dream, how we create empathy. It's what makes us storytellers, and what makes us wonder, what if I'd turned left instead of right? But there's a curious thing about these imagined realities. The mind doesn't always hold them as fake. Sometimes they feel as real as the life we're actually living. Sometimes they linger like smoke from a candle just snuffed out. No flame, no light, but the memory of heat still warming the room. When we sleep, the boundaries soften even more. Dreams swirl with impossible combinations, familiar people in unfamiliar places. You're yourself, but also not. You're here, but also somewhere else. And for a moment, it doesn't seem strange at all. In dreams, we don't question why the ocean is inside a living room, or why the person talking to you has your voice but not your face. Our dream selves don't panic at contradictions. They move through those strange universes with a kind of grace, a kind of surrender. Perhaps that's why the idea of the multiverse feels so intuitively right. Because in some way we already visit it. Not through wormholes or equations, but in sleep, in memory, in grief. In those private little reels we play behind closed eyes, rewinding, rewriting, reaching. You see, the mind is a multiverse all on its own. A space where endless versions of you already exist. The you who stayed, the you who left, the you who never found this video and kept scrolling, even the you who is now gently drifting towards sleep. And this isn't just poetic musing. Cognitive science supports the idea that the brain doesn't process reality as one continuous stream. Instead, it's constantly stitching together fragments, moments, sensations, predictions, into a coherent story. But it leaves gaps, and in those gaps, anything can live. A memory you misremember, a choice you didn't make but feel like you almost did, a face you swear you've seen before but haven't. So when we talk about the multiverse, when we ask if our universe is just one of many, we're not just asking about physics, we're asking about perception, about imagination, about the human mind's relentless ability to fill in the spaces with what might have been. The multiverse isn't just an idea from particle accelerators or math beyond comprehension. It's in the pause before a decision. It's in the silence after a loss. It's in the impossible feeling that somehow, somewhere, you're still there, even though you're here. And maybe that's why this question stays with us. Not because we're desperate for science fiction to be true, but because something deep in our psyche whispers, there's more. More than what we can touch. More than this version of now. More than one life, lived in one direction, on one lonely stage of stars. It's not certainty we crave. It's possibility. The comfort of knowing that even if something ended here, it might have continued elsewhere. Somewhere. Somewhen. And so, as we begin to explore what science says about the multiverse, string theory, eternal inflation, quantum branching, remember, this isn't just about atoms and dimensions and probabilities. It's about you, your choices, your dreams, your infinite capacity to imagine a reality just beyond the one you know. So keep breathing, keep wondering, because the next version of you might already be listening, just a few universes over. Long before scientists gave us numbers and names for other universes, long before chalkboard equations tried to stretch space and split dimensions, human beings were already dreaming of many worlds. They didn't call it a multiverse, they called it spirit realms, sky kingdoms, shadowlands, underworlds, heavens, dreamscapes. Places beside our world, or inside it, or behind a veil too thin to measure, but too thick to see through. In ancient Persia, they believed the soul crossed 7 heavens. In Norse mythology, 9 realms hung like fruit from the branches of a great cosmic tree. In Hindu cosmology, the universe is one of many, layered and cyclical, with births and rebirths playing out across unimaginable eons. Again and again, across continents and cultures, humanity returned to this idea, that what we see is only a sliver. That reality, true reality, is vast, tiered, multidimensional. And while today we use terms like quantum foam or eternal inflation, back then it was myth, story, and sacred vision. Not lesser, just older. The ancient Greeks told of a realm called Hyperuranian, a place beyond the heavens where perfect forms lived, truer versions of everything here. You've seen a horse, but in Hyperuranian there is hoarseness, pure and untamed by time. Plato imagined that this world was just a flickering shadow on the cave wall, a projection from a truer, higher place. A metaphor, yes, but perhaps also a theory. In Australia, Aboriginal cultures speak of the dreaming, or dream time, not as fantasy, but as a timeless dimension that exists alongside this one. A place where ancestors walk, stories unfold, and creation still hums beneath the skin of the earth. It is not then, or somewhere else. It is now, always, layered into the world like a song heard only when you're quiet enough to listen. In Japanese folklore, there are tales of parallel realities hidden in forests or under lakes. A fisherman might vanish for what feels like days, only to return and find that centuries have passed. In Celtic myth, the otherworld exists just a step to the side, across a misty river or through a stone arch, or within a dream. Time flows differently there, the laws shift, and the self that crosses over may never return quite the same. Even in early Jewish mysticism, texts like the Zohar speak of multiple worlds, stacked like mirrors reflecting divine light in endless permutation. And the idea wasn't always spiritual. Sometimes it was just human. In the 2nd century, a philosopher named Chrysippus wrote about a form of cosmic recurrence, that the universe, in its vastness, might eventually repeat itself. Every atom, every moment, every choice, played again, forever, in an endless loop. Not unlike the modern concept of eternal inflation, which we'll meet soon. But even back then, 2,000 years ago, people wondered, if the cosmos is infinite, couldn't everything happen, not just once, but many times? In medieval Islamic philosophy, scholars like Fakhr al-Din al-Razi considered that the stars in the sky might be sons of their own, each with their own world, their own life, their own people. The Quran in fact uses the plural, al-alamin, the worlds, not one, many. And as the telescope replaced the scroll and as maps grew wider than their margins, the question didn't fade, it grew. Because the more we saw of the universe, the more we realized how little of it we occupied. Earth once felt like the stage, then it became a spot, then a moat, then not even that, just a whisper in the dark. The Copernican shift, placing the sun, not us, at the centre, was more than astronomy. It was the first nudge of perspective, the first time we really asked, wait, if we're not the centre, who says we're the only ones? By the 18th century, philosophers were casually tossing around ideas that look very much like today's many worlds interpretations. Leibniz, for instance, believed in a plurality of possible worlds, with God choosing the best one to make real. Voltaire mocked the idea in Candide, but the seed had been planted. What if this world is just one option among many? Centuries later, in fiction, the multiverse bloomed. From ancient epics to modern sci-fi, we've written ourselves into other realities again and again. Fairy tales spoke of mirrors you could walk through, portals in trees, kingdoms where time moved differently. Writers like Jorge Luis Borges played with infinity like it was string. In The Garden of Forking Paths, he described a universe where every possible decision branches out, each one leading to a new path, a new story, a new world. Sound familiar? Modern cinema and television have made the multiverse a plot device, a metaphor, and lately, a genre all its own. But it didn't start with superheroes. It started with wonder. The sense that this moment, this life, this world, can't be all there is. That something ripples just beneath the fabric of what we call real. Of course, ancient myths weren't peer-reviewed, and early philosophers didn't run simulations. But their questions, their metaphors, their hunger, it laid the groundwork for the science that would follow. Because science is not the opposite of story. It's the method we use to test which stories are true. And the multiverse? It's a story we've been telling for thousands of years, not always with equations, sometimes with music or dreams or a glance up at a night sky full of stars that seemed even then like homes for other versions of us. And as we drift now into the next layer of this quiet cosmic tale, as we step from folklore into physics, let's carry something with us. The knowledge that our ancestors may not have spoken in terms of membranes or inflation fields or probability amplitudes, but they too felt the pull of the unknown. They too peered through the veil. They too believed that the universe might be wider, stranger, and infinitely more wondrous than it first appears. Let's begin not with the end of the universe, but with its beginning. Not a bang exactly, more of a bloom, a whisper in the dark growing louder, an explosion that didn't blast into space but created space itself. The universe, our universe, had a moment of birth. At least that's what the current models suggest. It was very small, unimaginably hot, and filled with a strange energy. And then, in a fraction of a second, it inflated. That's the word physicists use. Inflation. A swelling of space faster than the speed of light, faster than thought. In that first blink of cosmic time, the universe expanded from subatomic to cosmic, 100 trillion times bigger in less time than it takes for a photon to wiggle. This wasn't just explosive, it was orderly, a kind of quiet storm that smoothed out irregularities, ironed out the wrinkles and set the stage for galaxies, stars, and eventually, us. But here's where things get strange. Stranger than strange. Some versions of inflation theory, including the one many cosmologists favour today, say that inflation didn't stop everywhere. In our tiny patch, yes, it ended, cooled, and coalesced. Atoms formed, planets spun, life emerged. But in other patches, perhaps most patches, inflation continued, and may still be continuing. This idea is called eternal inflation, and it paints a picture not of a single universe, but of a vast foaming sea of them, a cosmic multiverse. Each bubble of that foam becomes its own universe, with its own physical laws, its own particles, its own rules. Some may be similar to ours, others radically different. A universe with no gravity, a universe where light never formed, a universe where stars live for moments or forever. We live in one such bubble, expanding gently now, stars aging gracefully, galaxies pulling apart like slowly melting sugar. But if eternal inflation is true, then our bubble is one of countless others, each expanding, each sealed off, each living out its own version of physics. And here's the strange part. You can never travel between them. They're not nearby in the usual sense. They don't share space. They create their own. Imagine blowing soap bubbles. Each one grows its own surface, its own inside. They may bump into each other or stay forever apart, but each is a world unto itself. In this version of the multiverse, our universe is not the centre of everything. Not even close. It's a note in a cosmic symphony, a single echo from an instrument playing infinite melodies. It's a comforting idea in a way, or maybe an unsettling one, because it means we're not alone, but we're also unreachable. There may be universes out there where Earth never formed, or where Earth is the only planet, or where the laws of chemistry made life not impossible, but inevitable and unimaginably strange. There may be versions of the cosmos where stars form twice as fast, or where time flows in loops, or where the speed of light is slower so sunsets last forever. And what's more, this isn't science fiction. It's math. It's logic. It's the unfolding consequence of equations we already use. You see, when cosmologists modelled the early universe, they weren't looking for a multiverse. They were just trying to explain why our universe looks the way it does. Why the background radiation, the ancient glow from the Big Bang, is so smooth, so uniform, so finely balanced. Inflation answered that. And then, quietly, it led to something more. It's like opening a drawer to look for a spoon and finding a second kitchen you never knew was there. That's the nature of ideas. They branch, they bubble, just like universes might. And so, eternal inflation became one of the earliest serious scientific pathways to the multiverse, not because anyone wanted it, but because the math left the door open, and what a beautiful door it is. But inflation isn't the only path. There's another, older in some ways, more microscopic and perhaps more personal. To find it, we need to go small, very small, smaller than atoms, smaller than quarks, all the way down to the trembling strings that some physicists believe make up everything. Let's shrink the universe now, not in size exactly, but in scale. Let's drift downward, inward, quieter, beneath atoms, beneath protons, beneath the smallest particles we can name, until we reach something stranger still. Strings, tiny vibrating loops of energy. Not particles, but patterns. Not dots, but dances. This is the heart of string theory, an ambitious, intricate, breathtaking attempt to describe everything in the universe with just one kind of ingredient, the string. In this theory, all the particles we know, electrons, quarks, photons, are not fundamentally different from each other. They're just different vibrations. Imagine a violin string. One note played gently becomes an electron, another, faster vibration, a photon, a different twist, a graviton. Each note on this cosmic instrument gives rise to a different piece of matter or force, one underlying form, infinite expressions. It's beautiful, almost poetic. But string theory doesn't come without a price. To work, to be mathematically consistent, it needs extra dimensions. Not just the familiar 3 of space and 1 of time, but 10 or 11, maybe more, dimensions we don't see, dimensions that might be curled up, compacted, hidden at scales too small to measure, like threads woven so tightly into the fabric of reality that they've become invisible. And here's where things get curious. Depending on how those extra dimensions are curled, the physics of the universe changes. The way strings vibrate depends on the shape of these hidden dimensions, and that determines what kind of universe you get. Gravity might be stronger, particles might have different masses, the universe might expand faster, or never cool, or be too chaotic for stars to form. Each configuration, each fold of those dimensions leads to a different version of physics. And here's the kicker. There are a lot of possible configurations, not hundreds, not thousands, but something like 10,500 different possible ways the extra dimensions could be shaped. That's a 1 followed by 500 zeros, a number so vast it dwarfs even the number of atoms in the observable universe. This collection of possibilities is called the string theory landscape, and each valley, each plateau, each path on that landscape could correspond to a different universe. Somewhere in that dizzying terrain of equations and geometry is a universe like ours, and countless others, almost like ours, radically unlike ours, and maybe other yous. Some physicists believe that this landscape isn't just theoretical, that every point on it is realized somewhere, that our universe is just one coordinate in a vast multi-dimensional possibility space. And again, this isn't science fiction. It's a consequence of trying to unify gravity and quantum mechanics, the two great pillars of modern physics. String theory may not be proven, but it's deeply respected, and it whispers again and again, there is more than this. Now imagine combining this landscape with eternal inflation, a universe that bubbles endlessly and selects a different string theory configuration in each bubble. Each new universe in the multiverse doesn't just form, it rolls the cosmic dice, lands on a new set of physical laws, and blooms, over and over, forever. And we live in one where the numbers just happen to line up, where stars can burn, where carbon can bond, where brains can form and wonder about their own existence. It's tempting to call this luck, but in this view, it's not that we're special. It's that with enough universes, one like ours was bound to show up eventually. This brings us to an idea called the anthropic principle, the notion that we observe a universe compatible with life because, well, we're here to observe it. We couldn't live in the 499 Other universes where the laws don't allow for chemistry or stars or thought. We find ourselves here because here is where finding is possible. That might feel unsatisfying, or profound, or both. But in the world of science, not all answers come with a sense of closure. Sometimes they come with a sense of vastness and a growing awareness of how much we still don't know. So far, we've explored the multiverse from two directions. The cosmic, through eternal inflation, with bubble universes expanding in all directions, and the microscopic, through string theory, with its unfathomable landscape of possibilities. Both are grand, both are speculative, both make compelling cases. But there's one more path to the multiverse, and it doesn't come from the fabric of space or the shape of hidden dimensions. It comes from something much closer. Something inside every atom, something humming in silence. It comes from quantum mechanics. Let's return now to something smaller, quieter, stranger, the quantum world. A place where particles shimmer in clouds of probability, where things don't just happen. They maybe happen, sort of happen, and sometimes happen all at once. In this realm, certainty fades. A particle isn't here or there. It's here and there until observed. Like a whisper caught between words. You may have heard of the double-slit experiment, a famous, puzzling demonstration where electrons, tiny charged bits of matter, are fired at a barrier with two openings, and if you just let them pass through and hit a screen, they behave like waves, interfering with themselves, forming patterns as if each electron travelled through both slits at once. But if you observe them, just watch them, they behave like particles, choosing one slit, acting normal. It's as if the universe changes when you look at it, as if reality itself hesitates, waiting to see what you expect before deciding how to appear. This is where quantum mechanics gets tricky, because it doesn't deal in clean answers, it deals in probabilities, equations that describe the likelihood of something happening, but not what actually will. So how do we go from a blur of probabilities to a single event? Why does one outcome unfold when the math suggests so many could? In the 1950s, a young physicist named Hugh Everett had an idea, a radical one. He suggested that maybe the outcome doesn't collapse into one reality, maybe it branches, and all possible outcomes actually occur, just in different parallel worlds. This became known as the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, and it opened the door to a new kind of multiverse. Imagine flipping a coin. Heads, you go outside. Tails, you stay in. In the many worlds view, both happen. Not metaphorically, literally. At the moment of decision, the universe splits. Two realities unfold. One where you're lacing up your shoes, and another where you're reaching for tea. And this branching doesn't just happen when you make choices, it happens constantly. Everywhere. Every quantum interaction, every particle choosing a path, every atom caught in uncertainty causes a split. The result? A constantly branching tree of realities. An ever-expanding cosmos where every possibility plays out, where every choice is made, every outcome explored, every version of you lives on, somewhere. There's a universe where you didn't move to that city, where you never met that person, where your favourite book was never written, where you speak a different language, or none at all, and the universe doesn't favour one version over another. They're all equally real, equally complete. It's a dizzying idea, almost uncomfortable, because it turns choice into something strange, not unique, but eternal, infinite. In this view, death is just one branch, loss, another, love, another still. Somewhere the moment lasted longer, somewhere the goodbye wasn't said, somewhere you took the leap. But don't let this unsettle you, because this idea isn't meant to take meaning away from your life. It gives it layers. It means that every breath is echoed in endless ways. that your existence isn't a single thread, but a vast, blooming tapestry woven in infinite strands. Now, before we float too far, it's important to say this is still interpretation, a way to read the equations of quantum mechanics, not a confirmed fact. There are other interpretations too. Some physicists believe the wave function collapses at random. Others think the observer's consciousness plays a role. Some propose hidden variables we haven't yet discovered. But many worlds has a strange elegance. It doesn't add anything new, it just refuses to erase. Rather than cutting off all the possible outcomes except one, it keeps them all. Like a storybook where every ending is written, and each one plays out in its own hidden chapter. This quantum multiverse is different from the cosmic bubbles of eternal inflation, or the dimensional folds of string theory. It doesn't exist somewhere else in space. It branches out alongside us, with us, moment by moment, like shadows made of light. And what's most curious of all, this interpretation doesn't require new physics. No extra dimensions, no new particles, just the equations we already use to explain how electrons behave, how atoms bond, how stars fuse. It asks us to take those equations seriously, even when they suggest something unimaginable. And if this version of the multiverse is true, then the implications ripple outward in ways we're only beginning to grasp. We'll explore some of those strange implications in our next stretch of this slow, winding journey, because in a universe that never stops branching, you're never truly alone. You're a forest of selves, a constellation of choices, and one of those selves is here, right now, still listening. Let's stay here a moment longer, in this strange, invisible forest of branching worlds. If quantum reality is a tree, then every leaf is a possibility, every stem a choice, and every fork a fork that forks again, silently, endlessly. But if these worlds exist, if every outcome is real somewhere, then what does that mean for you? Are you just one version of yourself? Or are you part of something larger, a web of selves, echoing outward in a choreography so vast no one version can hold the whole dance? Let's take a simple moment. You wake up. Decide whether to get out of bed or hit snooze. According to many worlds, you do both. In one branch, you rise. In another, you roll over. And in each, a slightly different future unfolds. You might be thinking, but I only remember this one. And that's true, because your memory, your body, your brain, they exist within one thread. The branches don't talk, they don't compare notes, they drift quietly apart, each one sealed within its own unfolding story. But if they all exist, and you are in all of them, what happens to choice? Does it still mean anything? Some worry it doesn't. That if all choices happen, then no choice really matters. But that's like saying a song loses meaning because there are other songs, or that a single sunrise doesn't matter because there are others elsewhere. Your experience is still real. This version of you, listening, breathing, existing in this moment, is still making choices. Your path is still yours, even if others exist beside it. And maybe, just maybe, the multiverse gives meaning in a different way. Not through rarity, but through resonance. The idea that your choices ripple not just forward in time, but outward into possibility. That every act of kindness echoes in countless ways. That every moment of courage creates a constellation. And if that sounds poetic, well, so does the universe when you really listen. But what about paradox? If there are infinite versions of us, can they ever meet? Could we visit these other branches, slip between worlds, glance sideways and catch a glimpse of the road not taken? In fiction, of course, yes. Stories are full of portals, mirror worlds, timelines collapsing into one another. But in reality, or at least in the many worlds model, the answer is softer, gentler, a whispered probably not. The branches don't just split, they decohere. That's the technical term. It means they become distinct, inaccessible. like bubbles drifting on separate winds. Even if they started from the same breath, they cannot overlap again. The universe, kind as it is, keeps each world safe from contradiction. But still, we wonder. Because sometimes, without warning, we feel like we've crossed into a story we didn't mean to write. We misplace things we swore we never moved. We remember lines from movies that don't exist. We have conversations that feel already lived. Some call these moments glitches. The Mandela effect is one name for it, a kind of shared false memory that spreads across people who've never met. They remember something the same way, a logo, a spelling, an event. But it turns out they're all wrong. Or maybe not wrong, just remembering a different branch. Science hasn't confirmed this. There are more grounded explanations, memory errors, suggestion, pattern recognition gone haywire. But the feeling it stirs, that subtle ripple of, wait, wasn't it this way? It lingers. It's as if, for just a breath, your thread brushed against another. A kind of quantum breeze, just enough to ruffle the pages of your perception. And then it's gone. But the question remains, are we travellers between these worlds, or only dreamers of them? Some physicists believe we'll never truly test the many worlds interpretation. Because each branch is causally sealed, you can't send a message between them, can't measure their presence, can't prove they're there. But others suggest that the math, the consistency, the elegance of the theory is evidence in itself. It makes the equations simpler. It removes the mystery of collapse. It explains quantum randomness without needing to invoke magic. It is, in some ways, the most honest reading of the math. And still it's strange, because if true, then everything that can happen does. Not just in some vague cosmic way, but here, now, forever branching, forever blooming. It's not just parallel universes, it's a fractal of experience. One where you say what you meant to say, and one where you didn't. One where you left the party early, and one where you stayed, and something changed. And somewhere, a version of you is watching the stars right now, wondering if this universe is the only one. Maybe they're listening too. Maybe this voice reaches them, like a soft echo across the brains. Because if there are infinite versions of you, maybe there are infinite versions of this very moment, this very breath. And if all possibilities exist, then somewhere, one of them holds peace, and one of them holds sleep, and one of them is this one, here, now, still. So let the quantum world drift behind your eyes. Let the probabilities settle like falling feathers. You don't have to know all the answers. You only have to rest in the wonder, because the multiverse, in all its mind-bending complexity, is still, at heart, a story. To understand where the multiverse came from, we need to travel not across dimensions, but across centuries. Because long before anyone built a particle collider, before quantum mechanics twisted our idea of reality, before the word multiverse was ever whispered through scientific lips, human beings were already wondering, what if this isn't the only world? Let's begin in ancient Greece, not with gods or myths this time, but with philosophy. Around 400 BCE, a thinker named Democritus imagined the universe as an endless expanse filled with countless atoms, tiny, indivisible pieces forever colliding in the void. But Democritus went further. He believed there were not just many atoms, but many worlds, some with suns, some without, some where life might exist, others barren and still. To him, the universe was infinite, so why should nature stop at one? It was a bold idea, and for the most part, it was forgotten, or at least pushed to the margins of thought. For centuries, the dominant view, in Europe at least, was shaped by Aristotle, who imagined a single finite cosmos with Earth at the centre and celestial spheres spinning in divine harmony, orderly, predictable, comforting in its way, and closed. But the world was changing. In the 16th century, Copernicus nudged us out of the centre. The Earth, he argued, was not the still heart of the universe. It was just another planet, orbiting the Sun. Then came Giordano Bruno, an Italian philosopher and mystic who took this idea further than anyone expected, or perhaps wanted. Bruno believed that the stars were suns, that each of those suns could have their own planets, that some of those planets might have life, and that the universe was infinite, not just in space, but in possibility. He wrote, "There is a single general space, a single vast immensity which we may freely call void. In it are an infinity of worlds." He was tragically burned at the stake in 1600, not just for his cosmic speculations, but for many reasons, religious, political, theological, but still. His ideas echoed through time. Then, in the 17th century, Isaac Newton gave us a new kind of universe, a mechanical one, a place where time and space were absolute, where forces could be described with math, where the same laws applied everywhere. And in that clockwork cosmos, there was no reason the machinery couldn't run elsewhere too. Still, for all Newton's genius, his universe was just one. Grand, yes, but singular. It wasn't until the 20th century that things began to split, literally. Because with the arrival of quantum mechanics, certainty began to dissolve. Particles didn't behave like billiard balls, they behaved like clouds, blurred, uncertain, unknowable, until observed. This was unsettling. Even Einstein, who helped lay the foundations of quantum theory, resisted its implications. "God does not play dice," he famously said, but the dice rolled anyway. And in 1957, a 26-year-old physicist named Hugh Everett III took quantum theory in a direction no one expected. He proposed that instead of wave functions collapsing, instead of the universe choosing one outcome and discarding the rest, all possible outcomes actually happened. Each possibility spun off into its own world. No collapse, no deletion, just endless branching. He called it the relative state formulation. Later, others would call it the many worlds interpretation. Everett's idea was radical, elegant, terrifying, and mostly ignored. He left physics not long after, got a job at a defense contractor, died young. His ashes were scattered, at his request, into a trash bin. A quiet end for the man who may have changed everything. But his idea lived on. Slowly others began to take it seriously. Because quantum theory works. It predicts. It guides. It doesn't need many worlds to function, but many worlds remove the awkwardness, the randomness, the strange collapse that seems to happen just because we're watching. In the many worlds view, the universe never chooses. It just becomes. And then, in a completely different field, cosmology, another doorway opened. The inflationary model of the universe, developed in the 1980s by Alan Guth and others, was originally designed to solve problems with the Big Bang model. Why is the universe so uniform? Why is it flat? Why does it look the same in all directions? Inflation answered those questions, with the idea that the universe expanded incredibly fast in the first tiny fraction of a second after the Big Bang. But inflation had an unintended consequence. In many versions of the theory, this expansion doesn't stop everywhere. It continues in some regions forever. This is eternal inflation, a model in which different parts of the universe stop inflating at different times, forming bubble universes, each with its own laws, its own constants, its own physics. Our observable universe would just be one bubble in an ever-foaming sea. Each bubble could represent a separate universe, disconnected from the others, drifting in the quantum dark. This wasn't an interpretation of quantum mechanics. This was cosmology, physics, a natural result of equations designed for something else entirely. And then came string theory, an ambitious attempt to unify all the forces of nature by imagining that the smallest building blocks of reality aren't particles but strings. To make the math work, string theory requires extra dimensions, Not just the ones we know, but 6 or 7 more curled up tightly at every point in space. And how those dimensions are curled, how they fold, twist and knot, determines the properties of the universe. The result is something called the string landscape, a vast array of possible universes, each with different physics. And if eternal inflation is bubbling out new universes all the time, then it could be exploring the entire landscape. Each new bubble samples a different shape, a different tune. This is the multiverse of string theory, a near infinite number of possible realities emerging from the deep structure of the cosmos. And finally, as if that weren't enough, there's the quantum multiverse, Everett's many worlds interpretation brought back into the spotlight, not as fantasy, but as one of several legitimate readings of quantum theory, a reading where every quantum event branches reality, a multiverse not born of inflation, but of entanglement, of possibility, of decision. These three, eternal inflation, string theory's landscape, and quantum branching, don't compete. They could coexist. You could have a bubble universe formed through eternal inflation with a particular set of physics chosen from the string landscape, and inside that universe, quantum branching creating endless variations of events and outcomes, a multiverse within a multiverse within a multiverse. And all of this, all of it, has emerged in just the last few decades. The idea that was once mysticism, philosophy, poetry, is now studied with equations and simulations and satellite data. We haven't proven it, and maybe we never will. Maybe the other universes will always stay beyond our reach. But that doesn't make the question go away. If anything, it makes it more compelling, because the more we learn, the more we find ourselves at the edge of understanding, where the known begins to blur into the possible. And through that blur, the question returns, is this the only world? Are you the only you? Or are you just one chapter in a library without end? So now that we've stretched the branches wide, followed the bubbles of inflation, and tiptoed into quantum possibility, let's ask the question that hovers behind it all, not a scientific one, a human one. What does it mean for you to be you, if you're one of many? In science, we study patterns, we test predictions, we build frameworks that hold up under pressure, but even the most elegant theory leaves something untouched, the experience of existing, the thrum behind the numbers, the ache behind the data, the part that wonders at 2 a.m. whether it's the only one awake in the universe. Let's start there. What is identity in a multiverse? Is it continuity? The story you tell about yourself, from first memory to this moment? Or is it choice? The you who decided to stay or go or say nothing or speak? Or maybe it's attention, what you notice, what you care about, what you carry when no one is watching. But in a multiverse, those threads begin to fray. Because if every version of you exists, then which one is really you? The happy one? The lonely one? The one who tried? The one who stopped trying? And what if they're all equally real? Does that cheapen your story or deepen it? Maybe you're not a single point of light, but a constellation, a whole field of stars bound by the gravity of your name, some bright, some fading, some yet to be seen. And maybe that's the truth of it. You're not a single being, you're a field of possibilities, a waveform of selves. Each moment you choose isn't the only one that matters, but it's the only one you get to feel, and that might be enough. Philosophers have been chasing these questions since long before we called them physics. Are we free to choose our path, or are we swept along by causes we can't see? In a multiverse, this becomes even stranger. If every outcome exists, what is freedom? What is responsibility? If you choose to forgive someone here, but another you chooses anger, which one is the real you? And does it matter? Maybe what matters isn't being the only one who made the choice, Maybe it's just being the one who made it here, right now, in this thread, this room, this breath. Some thinkers have called the multiverse idea existentially disorienting. It suggests that you're one speck in an infinite collection of specks, not unique, not central, just a version. But what if that's not disorienting? What if it's liberating? If every version of you exists, then you're no longer trapped by the illusion that you must live perfectly. There is no perfect. There is only presence, only showing up to this moment as best you can. And that's enough. Because this version of you, the one reading this, the one whose hands rest softly in their lap, whose breath moves quietly in and out, this you has never happened before. Not like this, not here, not now. And when you begin to feel that, you start to see the multiverse not as an erasure of meaning, but as a vast and beautiful canvas, a place where every colour belongs, every note matters, every line contributes to the song. In Buddhism, there's the concept of non-self, that the you think you are isn't solid, isn't fixed, isn't even separate, that you are a flow, a process, a dance of conditions always changing. In that light, the multiverse feels strangely familiar. You're already many things, already shifting, already part of a great unfolding that can't be contained by a single label or memory or form, and yet you're still here, still holding a point of view, still watching it all unfold. Some theorists have asked, if the multiverse exists, why do we find ourselves in this version? Why this timeline? Why this branch? Statistically, we should expect to exist in one of the many observer-friendly universes, a world with stars, with physics that allows atoms and warmth and life. But beyond that, why this moment? Why you? Some call it the anthropic principle. We observe this world because it's the kind of world that allows observation. It sounds circular, and maybe it is. But maybe that circle is a kind of comfort. You're here because here is where someone like you can be. No grand reason, no divine assignment, just the quiet miracle of conditions aligned. And when you trace that alignment back through stars and cells and ancestors and chance, you find a story so fragile and improbable that it feels like fate. But it's not fate, it's emergence. It's the universe not needing to explain itself to still create meaning. Maybe then, the multiverse isn't an answer to why you exist, but a reminder that your existence is a thread woven into something impossibly vast. And even if you are only one strand in an infinite weave, you still hold shape, you still hold weight, even in your smallest moments, even in silence, especially in silence. There's another idea we can't ignore. If there are infinite versions of you, could consciousness shift between them? Could you in dreams slip sideways into another life? Could déjà vu be a memory from a parallel self? Could intuition be a whisper from a version of you who's already been through this? It's speculative, and the science doesn't yet say yes. But human experience has never waited for data to notice something strange. People have long felt that their lives are not the only ones they carry, that they've lived before, that they've lost things they never held, that they long for places they've never seen. Maybe those feelings are metaphors, or maybe they're echoes. Maybe memory itself is a kind of time travel, a way your mind dips into alternate arrangements of the past, rewriting, replaying, reaching for what might have been. And maybe that rewriting doesn't just stay in your head. Maybe every act of imagination creates a ripple. Maybe picturing another version of yourself nudges it closer to being, not by magic, but by attention. Because where you place your mind is where the world begins to change. That too is power, and it's yours. Not in every universe, but in this one, right now. So what are you choosing to carry? Which version of you are you feeding? The one who fears? The one who regrets? The one who hopes? Because they're all real in some way. But the one you nurture is the one that lives, So breathe gently, choose softly, let the other branches be. You don't need to chase them, you don't need to mourn them, you only need to honour them, and then return to the life you're holding in your hands. It's enough. Even here, at the edge of all thought, you're still whole, still one, still home. You don't need a chalkboard full of equations to feel the multiverse brushing past your skin. It's not only a theory buried in physics papers or a concept tucked inside black holes and math. It's right here too, in the everyday, in your kitchen, on the street, in the pause between one decision and the next. We all carry it, the quiet awareness that things could have gone differently. You make a choice, say a word, turn left instead of right. And then, for a split second, you wonder what would have happened if you hadn't. That flicker, that half-thought of a different moment, a different day, a different you, that's the multiverse. Not the science of it, but the soul of it. It hums behind memory, in those moments when you remember something that never quite happened, but feels like it could have. It lives in the pauses, the what-ifs and if-onlys and maybe in another life. You don't have to understand quantum mechanics to feel this. You just have to live. When you pass an old house and think, that could have been my home. When you look at someone you used to know and wonder what might have been if you'd called back, if you'd stayed. When you sit in silence and remember the version of yourself who dreamed a different dream. That's the multiverse too. It's grief sometimes, not just for what was lost, but for what never got to be. It's longing for the paths you didn't walk, the words you didn't say, the lives that almost unfolded but didn't. And sometimes it's comfort. Because somewhere, if only in imagination, a version of you still gets that chance, still finds their way back, still laughs at that joke, says yes, writes the letter. Even if it's not real, it's real to you. And that's a kind of magic, isn't it? We feel the multiverse in relationships too, in the way we meet someone and feel instantly known. As if somehow you've known each other before, like your lives brushed past each other in some other thread of time. Maybe you've had that feeling, that gentle recognition, that strange sense of you in someone else's eyes. We call it chemistry, synchronicity, fate. But it might just be the soft echo of a universe where you've always been together. Or maybe it's just how deeply two people can connect when they're truly seen. We use the multiverse to make sense of emotion, even when we don't say its name. We speak of gut feelings, as if some part of you already knows. We speak of déjà vu, as if you've already lived this moment once before. We speak of soulmates, as if there's a version of love that's bigger than time. Even the rituals we keep carry its shape. Birthdays, anniversaries, funerals. These are all ways we mark a timeline. Not just the one that is, but the one that wasn't. We light candles for the people who aren't here. We whisper their names. We imagine what they'd say if they were. In some part of our mind we hold them still, not gone, just elsewhere. And that elsewhere is a kind of multiverse, a way of saying, maybe things unfold differently in places we can't see. It doesn't matter whether it's physically true. What matters is that it helps us feel less alone, even in pain, even in the small moments. The multiverse is also in the way we talk to ourselves, in the jokes we make. In another universe, I'm rich and organized. In some timeline, I didn't send that embarrassing text. It's humor, but it's also hope. Hope that this isn't the only version, that somewhere you're doing okay, that not everything depends on this one fragile moment. You feel it in nostalgia, that ache when you see an old photograph and imagine who you were, who you could have been. You feel it in dreams, where logic softens and the edges blur and you wake with the taste of another life just beyond your reach. In many cultures, dreams are not just dreams. They're doorways, signals, reflections of the other side. Call it memory, call it psyche, call it quantum echoes. But sometimes, in a dream, you find yourself in a place that feels like home even if you've never been there. And maybe, just maybe, You have. You feel it in the way your mind revisits moments again and again, tweaking them, changing them, editing the scene until it makes more sense. This mental rehearsal, this inner film editing, this rewriting of your own past, is your brain simulating alternate timelines, making peace with them, or trying to. Even imagination is a form of multiverse. Children do it instinctively. They become astronauts, queens, time travelers, wolves, rain. They shape new worlds without hesitation. And though most adults stop, that capacity doesn't go away. You imagine futures all the time. You rehearse conversations that haven't happened yet. You picture success. You prepare for failure. You daydream. And in doing so, you create countless little branches that feel, for a moment, just as real. Even creativity itself is a kind of multiversal act. Every story you write, every character you invent, every melody you hum into the night is a possible world made visible. Artists are cartographers of the might have been. They paint timelines we cannot visit but still believe in. Every book you've ever loved was a universe you lived in, even just for a while. That's the thing. The multiverse isn't always a matter of where. Sometimes it's a matter of when, or who, or how it feels. You experience it every time you wonder if you're living the right life. Every time you wish you could see where another path would have led. Every time you try to forgive yourself for not knowing what you couldn't have known. You're not alone in this. Everyone walks with shadows of their other selves. The you who stayed, the you who spoke, the you who ran. You carry them like quiet passengers. They don't haunt you, not really. They remind you that you're capable of more than one life, even within this one. And the beauty is, you don't need to become someone else to honour that. You just need to let go of the idea that there's only one right way to be, that you must follow one perfect thread and never stray. Because life isn't a line, it's a weave, it's a dance, it's a soft unfolding in every direction. And you, exactly as you are with your doubts and your detours and your everyday miracles, are part of it. A single note in a cosmic song you don't have to understand to belong to. So let the other lives drift by. Let the what-ifs shimmer. Let the possibilities hum quietly in the background. You don't need to chase them. They're not gone. They're just resting in the folds of your imagination. You are here, and here is real, and here is enough. So far we have walked quietly through the science, the philosophy, the quiet ache of possibility. But now, let's loosen the thread a little. Let's tiptoe out beyond what's known, past the fences of theory, and into the playground of speculation. Because if the multiverse is even partly true, if existence is wider than we can see, then what else might be possible? What could happen if we let go of needing to know? Let's begin with the oldest fantasy of all, time travel. Not the neat, polished kind with machines and buttons, the messier kind, the aching kind, the version where you whisper to yourself in the past, "Don't leave yet, hold on a little longer, say it while you still can." We've all had that thought, what we do with a second chance. Go back 5 minutes, 5 months, 5 years, fix it, save it, try again. But the trouble with going back, as every story tells us, is that you change more than you mean to. Say one different word and everything shifts. This is the root of the grandfather paradox. If you go back and change something crucial, you risk undoing the very future that let you return. Cause and effect spiral, and you're left with a question. If you erase the version of yourself that went back, who went back? This is where the multiverse steps in, like a graceful solution. Instead of changing your own past, you simply split the timeline, create a new one, a version of the world where things went differently. Your original life remains intact, but now, somewhere out there, there's another version where you made it in time, where you said what needed saying, where you turned left instead of right. You don't fix the past, you create a new present, one you can't return to. It's comforting in a way, even if it's unreachable, to imagine that there's a universe where the things that broke never did, where you're still holding the hand you had to let go of, where you're still laughing in that kitchen years before the silence came. That idea shows up in dreams, in déjà vu, in the strange moments when time feels like it folds in on itself. You've probably felt it. You step into a room and feel like you've been there before, not just once but many times. You say something and the echo arrives too quickly. You remember an event that never quite happened. These are called temporal anomalies in science fiction, but they feel very human. They remind us that time, whatever it is, doesn't always behave. We like to think it flows forward, neatly, 1 second after the next. But what if it doesn't? What if time is more like a loop or a spiral? What if some parts of us already know the ending? You've probably had the feeling of sensing something before it happens, a quiet knowing, a pause that tells you something's coming. And sometimes you're wrong, but sometimes you're not. There are no equations for that, just the sense that maybe your mind is bigger than the moment, that some version of you has already walked this path and is leaving breadcrumbs for the rest of you to follow. There's a theory, highly speculative but beautifully strange, that your consciousness doesn't exist in just one world, that it moves, slips sideways into different timelines as you make decisions, that when you wake from a dream that feels too real, you're not just inventing images, you're visiting a neighbouring life. We don't have proof of this, but we do have stories. People who dream of cities they've never seen and later find them. People who swear they remember childhoods that don't match the photos. People who feel like they've met someone before when they haven't. Science calls it coincidence. But the mind calls it something more, and in fiction we give it names: sliders, jumps, quantum consciousness, timeline bleed. In science fiction, the multiverse is a canvas. You can leap through mirrors, step between shadows, use a machine to visit the you who made a different choice. But even in those stories, there's always a cost. The versions of yourself you leave behind, the reality you can't return to, the knowledge that not every world can be saved. There's something quietly painful about that. The idea that somewhere you found happiness, but not here. That in another life you got it right, and yet there's something beautiful too. Because if joy exists in any version of you, then joy exists. It's real, somewhere, and that matters. Maybe you don't have to feel it right now to believe in it. Maybe hope is believing in the version of yourself that made it through, and choosing, every day, to keep moving toward them, even if you never arrive, even if you only catch glimpses in dreams. That's what science fiction does best. It gives shape to longing. It lets us explore the impossible so we can better understand the possible. It asks questions we're too shy to say out loud, like, what if I could start over? What if I'm not the only one of me? What if there's more? Sometimes we need those stories just to keep going, and even though the multiverse may never be proven, even though you might never meet your other selves, the idea of it is enough to change how you live. Because once you imagine that your life could have gone 1,000 other ways, you begin to appreciate the one you're in. Not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. This version of your day, this thread of your choices, this exact moment, with its coffee stains and missed calls and quiet victories. No one else has this version, not even your other selves. This is your story. So let the sci-fi swirl around you. Let your mind wander. Picture yourself stepping through a door into a world where everything's just a little bit different, where gravity is soft, where your regrets have been rewritten, where someone is still waiting for you, as if no time has passed at all. Breathe into that image, not to escape your life, but to understand it more deeply. Because the multiverse isn't about leaving this world. It's about remembering that this world was never the only way, that you're not limited to the story you've already told, that you can begin again, any time, even now. So here's a final thought before we drift on. If somewhere out there's a version of you who feels whole and safe and loved, then somewhere in here, that version is possible too. You don't need a machine. You don't need to break the laws of physics. You just need to choose, in your small daily ways, to move toward that version. The one who breathes more slowly, who forgives more quickly, who remembers that existence itself is a kind of miracle. You're not trapped in one version of yourself. You're never stuck forever. You're always on the edge of a new timeline. So go softly, imagine bravely, and trust that even if the science never proves it, you are bigger than this moment. You're a multiverse in motion. So, after all of this, after branching timelines and drifting particles, after stories of string vibrations and expanding bubbles, after speculation, science, memory, and dreams, where are we now? Not in theory, not in measurement, but in you, right here, eyes heavy, mind full, heartbeat slow. You're still you, and yet maybe you're not quite the same. Something is quieter now, not empty, just still. Like a snow-covered field after the last flake has fallen, like stars blinking through the dark when the world has stopped asking them questions. We began with a question. Are we just one of many? And maybe we are. But now, at the end of this long unfolding, maybe the better question is, does it matter? Does knowing that there might be a billion versions of you somewhere beyond the veil of perception make this one any less precious? Maybe not, because the beauty of this moment isn't in how rare it is, but in how real it feels. This breath, this pause, this point of contact between skin and blanket, between thought and sleep. You're not smaller for sharing space with infinite selves. You're not diminished by the existence of other stories. You're one expression of a universe still learning how to speak itself into being. And this expression, this version of you that tuned in tonight, that stayed, that felt something, is enough. Not because it's correct, not because it's certain, but because it's alive. In all the theories we explored, in the branches and bubbles and quantum loops, what stayed with you? Not the equations, but the feelings they held. Possibility, wonder, permission to begin again. Because that's what the multiverse whispers if you listen closely. That reality is not fixed. That selves are not final. That time is not a prison but a river that sometimes splits into 1,000 gentle streams. And somewhere along one of those currents, you are smiling again. Somewhere you stayed. You said yes, you forgave, you found home. And here, in this life, you can still do all of those things. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not all at once, but gently, softly, with no pressure to get it all right. The multiverse is vast, but so are you. Maybe not in size, but in depth. You carry every version of yourself you've ever imagined. The child, the wanderer, the healer, the skeptic, the one who didn't know how to go on, and did anyway. They're all folded into your skin like quiet pages in a worn book, and you turn them one by one each day you keep going. Each moment you choose to stay curious, because what else is there? When the math fades, when the lights dim, when the diagrams blur into mist, there's still wonder. There's still the joy of not knowing, the comfort of possibility, the small sacred fact that this moment is real because you are in it, right now. No matter what you believe, no matter how much or how little you understand, no matter how long you've been carrying the weight of what if, you are allowed to rest. You are allowed to say, I don't know, and still feel awe. You are allowed to close your eyes and let the universe continue without you for a while, because it will, and when you wake, it will still be here, infinite, mysterious, and waiting for your next question. That's the quiet miracle of being conscious in a world like this. You don't need to understand it to be part of it. You already are. You, with your tired eyes and your tangled thoughts. You with your half-remembered dreams and unopened emails. You are a node in the web, a wave in the field, a voice in the song. And just like every particle is also a probability, so are you. Not fixed, not finished. Still unfolding, still changing, still learning how to hold joy and sorrow in the same breath, still becoming who you already are. So maybe we'll never know how many universes there are. Maybe we'll never prove how many times we've taken a different path in another life. Maybe we'll never meet the other versions of ourselves. But here's what we can do. We can pause. We can wonder. We can breathe. We can choose kindness toward others, toward ourselves, toward the versions of us we once were and the ones we'll never meet. We can treat this moment like it matters. Because it does. Not in a grand, epic, cosmic sense. Not in a destiny written in stars kind of way. But in the way that soft things matter. In the way that tea cools, and music fades, and someone remembers something you said long after you've forgotten it. This moment will pass, just like all the others, but that doesn't mean it's empty. It means it's full of what you feel right now. And right now, you've reached the end of a journey through the everything that might be, and here you are, safe, alive, possibly even a little more whole than when you began. So hold yourself like that's true, just for now, just for tonight. Close your eyes if they haven't already. Let the words dissolve like stardust on your breath. Let the thoughts drift into quieter rooms. And if you find yourself dreaming of other versions of your life, let them pass like ships on the horizon. No need to chase. You're already sailing your own. This life, this version, this breath. It's enough. And so are you. So, where are you now? What time is it in your quiet little corner of the world? Has the room changed since we started this journey? Has the light dimmed? Has your breath slowed? Are you closer to sleep? I hope so. We've wandered through possibility tonight. Stepped between timelines. Listened for echoes of ourselves in places we can't quite see. We asked big questions, but we weren't looking for answers. We were looking for space, and maybe you found a little of that here. A breath you hadn't noticed, a thought you didn't need to hold anymore. Maybe, somewhere between string theory and parallel lives, between quiet sighs and whispered stars, you remembered something soft about being alive. If this brought you peace, or wonder, or even just a moment's pause from the noise of the day, thank you for being here. Thank you for making space in your mind for slow questions and soft science. Thank you for letting this version of yourself rest. If you'd like to come back again to this space, this voice, this calm, you're always welcome. And if you'd like to support this little corner of the universe, a like, a follow, a kind word means more than you know. But tonight, no more steps, no more timelines, no more questions, just quiet, just stillness, just you, at the edge of sleep, held gently in the arms of everything that might be. Sleep well, fellow traveller, wherever and whenever you are.